Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Around the Big Ten podcast. I'm Marc Givler. Chip Minnich with me here as always. We are continuing our schedule analysis of all 18 Big Ten teams. We've got a big one here today. Penn State. This is a program that's going to be in the top 5 nationally, that's got playoff hopes, national championship aspirations, and obviously Big Ten championship aspirations. So this will be a fun one to pick through. Chip, first of all, how are we feeling today? It's our weekly check-in here. Is the month of June going fast enough for you as we close in on conference media days?
It's going fast enough. And honestly, speaking, this is just more of like being the lifelong Ohioan. I want to emphasize, we are finally in summer. We finally have summer-like weather. I'm kind of the mindset that we don't really ever have spring. I think it just gets less and less cold. And then the next, that we're into summer. But I don't want to sound negative, but yes, June is off to a great start. I'm getting, as you said, Mark, I'm getting more and more anxious for Big Ten media days on a daily basis. The college football preview magazines are out, so I'm going to be acquiring those. So yeah, I'm getting more and more excited as every day passes.
Yeah, we're getting there. June's a tough month if you're not a recruiting fan. I'm a huge recruiting fan. It's my background. It's what I do. So it's a great month for me. But if you're more of the just kind of wake me up on signing day and tell me who we got kind of person, then you're dying right now, kind of waiting for things to get toward August here. But we're getting there. So let's dive into the Penn State schedule here. Obviously, the first thing that jumps out to me, very, very soft non-league. 3 home games, 3 games they'll probably be 30-plus point favorites. No danger there. Then you get a bye week. Then Oregon comes to town right out of the chute. We're going to get a huge Big Ten matchup in terms of the conference championship race. Then, again, you kind of like UCLA. It's a West Coast trip, though, in Northwestern at home. That's nice. And then you get into – that's when it starts to pick up, though, because then you go to Kinnick. You're at Ohio State, Indiana. We expect Michigan State, Nebraska to be improved. What do you make of this schedule? There's a couple of big games there, a couple losable games there, but this just looks very, very safe for them to go somewhere in the vicinity of 10-2 and get themselves in the playoff. We'll do best case, worst case later, but this just looks like a very safe schedule for a team that's trying to get back to the college football playoff.
I like the way that you phrased that. I definitely safe, very, very soft beginning. And if anything, I would be, if there was a hint of caution for Penn State fans, is the fact that you're not going to go into Big Ten conference play really being tested. I mean, let's just be completely fair and objective here. Is that the 3 home games in the non-conference, Penn State will win those quite easily. And so then Penn State fans, I know, are ecstatic, understandably, about the fact that they get Oregon coming to play them at the end of September. They get their whiteout game. And so this is going to be an opportunity for them to try to intimidate Oregon with the students and the raucous atmosphere. And it should be a great game. I would just be a little bit concerned about the fact, okay, have we really been tested? Because Oregon, by that point, I think Oregon is going to be. I realize we haven't done the Oregon breakdown yet, but I think that Oregon may be a little more battle tested, for lack of a better word, than Penn State at that point. So I think Penn State is kind of putting all their eggs in that basket for that Big Ten season opener against Oregon at the end of September.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Dante Moore, quarterback for Oregon, is going to be able to get his feet underneath him for a few weeks before that game. He's got starting experience, but it's been a while, and he had the transfer year and watched behind Dylan Gabriel last year. So you're getting Oregon at kind of an interesting time on the calendar. That's obviously going to be one of the biggest games of the entire year in college football. We mentioned kind of the Ohio State-Texas game where, even though it's being played, in August, that the winner of that game is like in the playoff almost already. Well, if Penn State beats Oregon at home there, I think Penn State's in. I don't know that they could lose enough games after that to drop out of the playoff. I mean, I just think that's almost a play-in game for Penn State, and I would argue probably Oregon too. I think the winner of that game is in incredible shape to be one of the 12 playoff teams. So that's a huge game, obviously. Are there some games on here, obviously, like, look, Oregon, Ohio State, we get it. That those are the two games. Those are the games that are going to ultimately decide, who wins the Big Ten, seeding in the playoffs, making the playoffs, missing the playoffs. There's so many things that are going to go into those two games for Penn State. But do you see some kind of landmine games here where you're like, ooh, they better be careful here, or, let's watch out for this one?
Yeah, let's exclude the Oregon game as well as Ohio State, because I would agree with you. I think those are the games that kind of jump out at you. The cross country trip the week after the Oregon game, the game against UCLA. Now, granted, Penn State will be favored, understandably, but the fact that it is a cross country trip, that would have me a little bit more concerned. And then I just have to throw it out there because it's traditionally been one of these Big Ten environments where teams that have been doing well, they go there and the next thing you know, they suffer a loss. And I'm talking about the game at Iowa on October 18th. No kickoff time has been set yet, but Penn State Iowa games have usually been closely fought battles. I think that one is one to keep an eye on. And then, kind of jumping ahead beyond the game at Ohio State on November 1st, I think it just remains to be seen, even though they're going to be hosting Indiana, the fact that on November 8th, what kind of psychological stage is Penn State in if they do have a loss at Ohio State? Again, we're months away from it. I would think that Ohio State would be the favorite, considering the advantage that the Buckeyes have had over the Nittany Lions over the last several years. So if Penn State were to lose a close one, are they going to be able to regroup and come back against a talented Indiana team? But I think you're right, Mark. I think Penn State, they win that game against Oregon on September 27th. I think you can pencil them in for one of the playoff spots. And as I said at the onset of recording this, I haven't purchased them, but I do know that within a lot of the various college football publications that Penn State is going into this season as the favorite, if not the complete consensus favorite to win the Big Ten in 2025.
Yeah, I agree with you. You kind of took my trap games there, but they kind of are what they are. Look, at Iowa is always going to be a trap game. And then you factor in that they have the bye week after that. So sometimes teams get a little bit like, oh, we'll just cruise into the bye week here, and they forget to show up for their game. Plus, you got the Ohio State game coming out of that bye week. So you're like, you don't want to get things rolling too far ahead of yourselves there with the Ohio State game. And you're going to be coming off a game at home against Northwestern where you're probably going to dominate. So it's like, okay, let's not look past this Iowa game. Indiana's interesting, win or lose against Ohio State just because the emotional letdown afterwards. Michigan State, I don't know. I just don't. I don't know. I would say the other one that's maybe interesting, and I could end up being way off on this. I think Nebraska could be better this year, and that's like a late season, like we're at home, like we just came out of like road Ohio State, home Indiana, road Michigan State. We're just going to come home and it's all going to be good. It's the last home game. We're just going to kind of show up and it's going to be fine. That one might be one to kind of keep an eye on as well. But I think quite clearly Iowa, Indiana are kind of the two where if they don't screw up one of those, I don't see how they don't make the playoff. There are so many paths here to 10-2, and a 10-2 Big Ten team is not going to get left out of a 12-team playoff, especially one with the prestige and tradition of Penn State. If Northwestern goes 10-2, I guess maybe they'd get some scrutiny on their schedule and things like that. But a 10-2 Penn State team is never going to be left out of this thing. So there's so many paths here. So with that said, Chip, best and worst case scenarios here. for the Nittany Lions in 2025, given that schedule.
Okay. I mean, I agree with you. You know, something we talked about when it came to the Ohio State schedule, the fact that, okay, it's probably unrealistic to predict Penn State to go undefeated. But when you look at this schedule, I mean, it's certainly possible. I think that the talent on hand is there, and the way that the schedule lines up for them to go 12-0, go and obviously claim not only a playoff spot, but also a berth in the Big Ten championship. I would say more realistically, and I'd say this is kind of on the worst case scenario, I'm going to say 3 losses. Let's just say that they lose at home to Oregon, they lose on the road at Ohio State, and maybe somewhere, let's just say that they kind of stub their toe, at Iowa in October, 9-3, and they might be on the outside looking in for the college football playoff if they have 3 losses.
Yeah, you're pretty much in my range as well. I just don't do the 12-0 thing. It just it's rare. For me, it takes a really special team with a really well set up schedule. So for me, I'm going to this is what I do with Ohio State. I'm going to do the same thing with Penn State. I think their best case is 11-1. I think their worst case is 9-3. And I think 11-1 is probably more realistic than 9-3. I think 10-2 is probably about the number, but 11-1, I think, again, more likely than 9-3. I do think they're going to be a playoff team. I do think there's a really good chance we see them in Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game. And so clearly, again, one of the top, half dozen or so teams on paper this year. I know Drew Aller's a bit polarizing. People like to kind of pick him apart, and is he as good as the credit he gets? I don't know, but I know he's going to be pretty well insulated this year. They're going to have solid lines. They're going to have the great running backs they have. Tyler Warren's going to be a tough guy to replace, but they've got some good young tight ends on the roster, and they've picked up some nice, we haven't really, before we did our pre-spring analysis, we're like, where are the receivers? Well, they went out and they got Treber Pena from Syracuse in the spring window. After we recorded that, and he's going to be one of the better receivers in the Big Ten. So they've even upgraded their receivers a little bit since spring kicked off. So I love their secondary too. So I think there's a lot working for them, and I think again this is a team that it's very difficult for me to see them kind of going worse than 10-2. But I just see Oregon and Ohio State are certainly losable games. Will they be favored against Oregon at home? I would guess they will be. I think it's going to be close. I think it's probably a field goal. Will they be underdogs? Probably on the road against Ohio State. I would think so there as well, but probably we're talking about a few point on the spread, and we're probably not talking about a huge point spread there. So if they split those games, 9-3 seems impossible. So it's really, if they lose both of those big games and like you said, stub their toe, maybe, you mentioned Iowa. Maybe they lose to Ohio State. Now they got 2 losses, and they let that. Sometimes you let those games beat you twice. Maybe Indiana the next week they're not ready for because of that. I mean, I'm just concocting scenarios here where they lose 3 games, but I don't think that's likely. I do think they're one of the safer picks to be in the college football playoff here in 2025. Chip, any parting thoughts here as we wrap this up?
I would just say that the intrigue is, or as you referenced, Mark, okay, like Drew Aller, all the hype. I mean, this is pretty much, I mean, there's going to be a lot of eyes and high expectations on Drew Aller and Penn State to be what Michigan was 2 years ago, what Ohio State was last year. I mean, okay, we've got everybody back, this is our chance to do that. And the other level of intrigue that I see is the fact that Jim Knowles made the move from Ohio State to Penn State. Now he's the defensive coordinator, did a tremendous job with the Buckeyes. Now I would kind of throw some caution in there, is that, all right, yes, there's talent there on that Penn State roster, but the Jim Knowles defense, I wouldn't look for it to be, an instantaneous impact. I think that there's some, obviously, a learning curve. How steep or how difficult remains to be seen. But yeah, Penn State, everything lines up really, really well for Penn State to be a college football playoff team in 2025.
Yeah, the Knowles factor is interesting just because he would say himself it takes like 3 years for him to fully implement everything. So like how much is he going to put on his guys right away? They do have some veterans though on defense. Maybe that speeds up the learning curve a little bit. They're also coming from a place where they're not desperate to fix their defense. Their defense has been good. They lost their defensive coordinator because he took a raise in another job. They didn't fire him.
Right.
So he's kind of walking into a less desperate situation. When he walked into Ohio State, he's like, please fix this. Please fix this. It's not quite the same thing with Penn State. So that may allow him to get off to a bit of a faster start, to maybe get things implemented a little more quickly. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. I'll be interested, just as you are, especially that Oregon game, to kind of see what they look like defensively at that point. But yeah, like you said, very good chance of making the playoff. Very, very much one of maybe the 6-7 best teams in the country this year, and potential national championship contenders. So we will see if the Nittany Lions can live up to the hype. But appreciate everyone watching, listening. We'll be back here soon with another one. Keep it locked in here as we preview the schedules of all 18 Big Ten teams.